Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Saturday, August 2nd, and buying Canadian soup? No, you aren't. The recipe's just made in Canada. The soup is made somewhere else. And so Doug Ford goes after Campbell's Soup, and it's, ridiculous. It's ridiculous because Campbell's Soup is not going to fix this trade war. It's not going to win this trade war. Having a sane strategy will, and working with Trump to do the things that he's asking will, having counter tariffs, etc., will just fail. Telling us we're going to be our own best customer is really not a solution to this trade war. So everybody's failing with this trade thing. And well, it's disheartening because that's not very good for our country at all. Doug Ford is asking people to buy Canadian soup while the Canadian government, BC specifically, is spending $1 billion in China on ferries, and that's a big deal. There was a government hearing yesterday, and people were talking about it, so they've released a lot of the footage. Did anything get solved? Absolutely not. Is it a distraction? You bet. So we're not going to get anything solved. It's not going to be solved because they don't want to solve it. That's the point. They're going to keep this going on as long as they possibly can. They're going to keep wasting our money, having meetings about how they're wasting our money, and then say, we promise we're going to definitely stop wasting your money at some point in the future. And then they're never going to stop until we stop them. So Anand closes her office. I think this is narrative building. I don't think politicians should be able to close their office for, quote, safety reasons, safety concerns. If people are attacking your constituency office, that's an indication that they don't want you working for them. That's an indication that there's something happening within the electoral system where people don't feel heard and they have to act out in a way that is not usually how Canadians act out. And so attacking constituency offices, having politicians feel, quote, unsafe, especially ministers, that's a canary in the coal mine for people who are not believing this government is working in their best interest, are not happy with the results, are not happy with these people. And it's not surprising. We just had an election and nothing changed. And we were told change is coming and nothing's changed. And in fact, it's gotten worse, not better. So Anita and Ann, excuse for closing the office doesn't pass the smell test for me. Mockingbird Media never ended, says Tulsi Gabbard, which is true. And that's the same reason why former eTalk Daily hosts are now hosting their own podcast and getting big gets, right? It's very interesting because it's Mockingbird Media. And it's not just those big names that you know, it's a lot of them. And if they're not doing what YouTube says for the YouTube click money, then they might be doing what a party that they've entered into an agreement together says, or somebody else says, right? People promising stardom and all sorts of other things. Maybe they'll do what those people say, but it doesn't seem like a straight game. And the Mockingbird Media seems to be in control of our media as well, not just the United States. Safeway Canada in Alberta is removing flags from Alberta stores, Alberta flags from the stores in Alberta. No pipeline in Canada, says Enbridge. No, there's no business case for that, I guess. I don't know. And there's an Obama-Hillary coup. Right at the end of the show today, we're going to look at all of the things. And I've had some issues with the video. There's 2 videos in today's show that I can't play for whatever reason. And this one's pretty benign. It was going to start the show. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we got to talk about trade. This was going to start the show. This is when Mel Joly was saying, we're the Trump whisperers. All the other countries are coming to figure out how to deal with Trump. And, we're learning too, but, other countries have come to us for help. And ridiculous. So gov.exe says, remember when Mel Joly said the whole world was coming to Canada for advice on negotiating with Trump? What happened? Was Joly full of it? Yes, absolutely. She was lying. For sure she was full of it. Here is Donald Trump yesterday talking about how Mark Carty's been trying to call all day, but he's busy and stuff. He's got other things to do. Table Salt says Carney spent his whole day in his office yesterday trying to get a hold of Trump. Ha. Right? It's not important though. We're going to be our own best customer, everybody. Don't worry. I can buy myself flowers.
Trump putting pressure on Canada on the eve of a trade deadline, hours before making his threats real.
We like Canada. I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada. But they've been very poorly led. They've been very, very poorly led. And all we want is fairness for our country.
Tonight News, he signed an executive order increasing the tariff on Canada from 25% to 35% effective Friday. In Ottawa, Mark Carney had spent the day in his office as his team in Washington competed on the ground for the White House's attention.
We haven't spoken to Canada today. He's called and we'll see.
In the White House document, he complains Canada has failed to cooperate in curbing the ongoing flood of fentanyl and has retaliated against the United States for the president's actions. Trump putting pressure.
So Mel Joly was absolutely full of it. Absolutely. They walked into Trump's trap thinking that he was not serious, right? Come April 1st, May 1st, there were supposed to be tariffs and there weren't tariffs and there were tariffs. And so people were thinking, haha, this idiot. And now Trump's dialed in and he knows what he's doing. And he's got all sorts of deals with all sorts of other countries. And he is punishing Canada for being badly led because he told us on July 11th that there's a problem. We have a fentanyl czar that I haven't seen in months. A fentanyl czar? What? Seriously? I think we have a provincial fentanyl czar and a federal fentanyl czar, and I haven't heard a peep from any of them. Nothing about nothing, right? And so we know that the fentanyl trade is running drugs up into Vancouver from Mexico. China and Mexican drug cartels are working together to funnel fentanyl through Canada via trucking companies that are, run by another group, right? Everybody but Canada is running these drugs and the Canadian government just can't seem to see it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening here, right? And Canada, you and me are being punished for our government's facilitation of all of this because they are facilitating it. It's not just that they're turning a blind eye. They arrest people and then let them out on bail. The biggest drug bust in Canada had one person arrested, I think, and then he was let out on bail. Oh yeah, we're real sorry that we held you up, sir. I know you've got places to be. I'm sure there's a drug lab to set up or something like that. And there are other consequences as well. Roy Green is talking about the impact of Mark Carney's inability to get this done. Hello, Mr. Carney. Following up on your statement below concerning Canada's U.S. trade, and so he's referring to Mark Carney's statement, which is ridiculous, but fundamentally it says we'll be our own best tariffs, right? And also noting that the USMCA is in effect, so USMCA goods are still tariff-free at this point in time. So that's something. We'll read it we'll read it now. I guess we'll read a little bit of it now. This is the statement of Mark Carney, and it says, President Trump has announced that the United States will increase its tariffs to 35% on those Canadian exports that are not covered under the USMCA. While the Canadian government is disappointed by this action, we remain committed to the USMCA, which is the world's second largest free trade agreement by trading volume. The U.S.'s application of USMCA means the U.S. average tariff rate on Canadian goods remains one of its lowest for all of its trading partners. Other sectors of our economy, including lumber, steel, aluminum, and automobiles, are, however, heavily impacted by U.S. duties and tariffs. For such sectors, the Canadian government will act to protect Canadian jobs, invest in our industrial competitiveness, buy Canadian, and diversify our export markets. So as a follow-up, here is Roy Green, and he says, do you and the Liberal government accept any responsibility for the serious challenges ahead for the Canadian oil and liquefied natural gas exports to waiting international markets being at best a trickle instead of accounting for a regular and dependable inflow of billions of dollars annually? Your predecessor, Justin Trudeau, exercised the power of his office to stand in the way of development and export of plentiful Canadian oil and liquid natural gas reserves to advance economies like Germany and Japan, whose leaders came to Canada in attempts to secure oil and LNG exports to their countries. Mr. Trudeau insisted that there was no business case for such Canadian exports and sent the Chancellor of Germany and the Prime Minister of Japan packing. You insist you intend to pursue international trade opportunities in the wake of Mr. Trump's damaging to Canada tariffs declaration. You, Mr. Carney, acted as Mr. Trudeau's advisor for some considerable period of time. Did you advise Mr. Trudeau? Did your advice to Mr. Trudeau include persuading him that there was no business case for Canadian oil and LNG exports? Did you support Mr. Trudeau's government's threatening the premiers of Alberta and Saskatchewan? I spoke on air with very angry Premiers Smith and Moe on numerous occasions about these federal government threats. So what now, Mr. Carney? Are oil and gas development and export off the table for you? Is any rapid development of pipelines similarly off the table, or will you do everything you possibly can from the power of your desk to facilitate such development? Do you remain committed to your oft-stated net zero beliefs and the associated international assignment you accepted from the Secretary General of the United Nations? I suppose you might make a courtesy visit to Germany and Japan and offer to work with these nations concerning oil and LNG exports from Canada. However, it appears both have by now made deals elsewhere, and in the case of Germany and in the European Union with the United States just days ago. Since the U.S. is currently our only reliable destination for Canadian oil export, it now appears likely Canadian oil may make its way to Germany after all. You claim you will stand and defend the Canadian auto sector and Canadian auto sector jobs. Just how do you propose to do this, Prime Minister? By continuing with your decision to force, and beginning next year, a rapidly increasing number of new vehicles sold in Canada to be consumer unwanted EVs. Canada, the Canadian economy, and Canadians from coast to coast are destined to struggle economically when it all could so easily have been avoided. Prime Minister Carney, please look deep inside yourself. And remember, it is Canada and Canadians you swore to represent and protect. Well, after Brookfield, though, I mean, you've got allegiance first to your stock portfolio. Isn't that how it works, right? Stock portfolio first, wives second, right? And then other commitments as they fall, right? I think probably Masonic Lodge comes after that. Oh, wait, no, Masonic Lodge is first, right? I forget the order sometimes. Sorry. Ron's responding to this as well. And he says, there's a lot I could say, but I'll try to keep it tight. What incentive does any Canadian have to fix the mess that we're in when our own government can't even maintain a functional relationship with the United States? From the moment this became an election about an existential threat to Canada's economy, Canadians were fed a steady stream of political spin. Instead of taking action, there was denial and avoidance, like the government figured if they stalled long enough, Canadians would just move on. Honestly, most Canadians did move on. Nobody noticed that Trump announced this on the 11th. Nobody did anything till the 23rd. And then Mark Carney didn't even convene the cabinet till the 30th. Didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. He didn't respond. Nothing. Period. And then now we're surprised. I'm not surprised. You're not surprised because you watch the show and I've been talking about this for a while. But most people, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Right? And then some people aren't impacted at all, but they will be. It's going to happen. There is going to be a negative fallout from this. And it's going to impact us for a long time because apparently our government is completely stupid. Back to this. Rather than leading, they're leaning into photo ops, media headlines, and polished messaging. And the result, tariffs on Canadian goods jumped from 25% to 35%, while the U.S. points to our collapsing public safety, fentanyl epidemic, and open borders as national security concerns. And somehow, after 10 years of liberal mismanagement, Canadians were convinced to double down. No, our elections are rigged. And the story being told to us is a story to convince us not to show up with pitchforks and say, get out, you friggin' criminals. That's their job. And they've done their job. And most Canadians believe in all of this. But it's fake. It's fake. Our elections are rigged. The people running things work for the WEF, not for us. And it's very clear because they have positions on the WEF and they don't work for us. We just pay them to hang out and implement the WEF's agenda. That's the sad truth. Nobody was convinced of anything. If we were convinced of anything, it was by the media that this whole thing was above board and don't worry about it, go back to sleep. Right? Yep. Go to the bathroom and then go back to bed. What we've actually gotten is a government that knows how to monopolize and interfere with consumer choice at the expense of Canadian families, workers, and businesses. We are watching Canada fall apart in real time, economically, socially, and institutionally. And I think that it's going to be picked up by probably the United States because once it collapses, it's going to be easy pickings. So if the United States can, they will. But I don't know if they'll be able to, quote, keep it. Instead of rebuilding trade relationships or stabilizing our economy, Canada is staring down a federal deficit pushing $90 billion, while the government continues to send hundreds of millions overseas while people here can't afford basic necessities. To those who voted for this to justify it, how is any of this helping? Let's not victim blame. We are being attacked, and this is not just happening in Canada. Brian Lilly is talking about Carney's promise versus result. Before Carney, softwood lumber 14%, energy 10%, critical minerals 10%, potash 10%, steel and aluminium 25%, other non-CUSMA goods 25%. After 5 months of Carney, softwood lumber's doubled to 27%, energy still 10, critical minerals 10, potash 10, steel and aluminum 50, cars and trucks 25. Copper 50, other non-USMCA goods 35%. So that's not great, right? And Michelle Rempel says, explain to me about the elbows again. Like, how is this helping at all? It's not. Aaron Gunn says, Mark Carney ran his entire election campaign with one signature promise that he could deal with Trump and get us out of the tariffs. Can anybody honestly say that he's kept that promise? No, absolutely not. But that's just a story we were told anyway. Roman Babber says Europeans cut a deal and left Mark Carney out to dry. Plus, the Americans stole our lunch by selling the EU $750 billion in oil and LNG. They didn't steal our lunch. We told those people. We said to Japan and we said to Germany, sorry, man, there's no business case. We can't even figure out how to make a pipeline here. Okay, so get out of here and take your money with you. We chased them out of here. They didn't steal our lunch. We gave our lunch sandwich to Germany and they went to the United States and ate it with the United States. And so we screwed ourselves and we allowed these people to screw us. Terry says, Carney, we've found a reliable trading partner to replace America. Me, oh yeah, who is it? Carney, it's ourselves. Me, you really are as dumb as a stump. He's not the smartest man in the room. He's an idiot. Food Professor says the recent shortcomings of U.S. trade policy would likely have persisted regardless of whether Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney were prime minister. Navigating negotiations with Donald Trump is inherently difficult, irrespective of political affiliation. What would have differed, however, is the domestic response. Had Poilievre presided over the same failures, the media scrutiny would have been relentless, potentially to the point of demanding his resignation. Such is the reality of governing in a country with a deeply entrenched liberal political culture. I think that's probably true, and I think it's interesting that the media is basically covering for Carney. Further, Poilievre absolutely would have failed in making a deal with Donald Trump because by and large, he agreed with the dollar for dollar tariffs that Doug Ford was blustering about yesterday. I don't think that Poilievre had a plan either. The only thing that's going to work is if somebody comes in and actually shuts down the fentanyl, actually shuts down the border, and actually works in good faith with Donald Trump and his representatives. That'll work. Everything else, it won't work. And that's plain to see. Plain to see. Freedom Fighter says Canadians will be our own best customer, Mark Carney, while Canada runs out of the ability to pay more taxes, subsidizes the crap out of everything, and is rapidly going bankrupt. This isn't a game, folks. Canada is crumbling. Hunger, need, and want are coming hard. I hope that's wrong. I hope that's incorrect, but people are predicting this. Here's Doug Ford, and he's talking about Campbell's soup, and it's a little bit ridiculous. It's a lot ridiculous. Here we go. This is not how you win a trade war against the United States.
And you go to buy a product, just flip it around the back and see where it's manufactured. And buy Canadian when you can, anything possible. And I got to call one company out that I learned when I was, just 2 days ago, I met with all these tin can users and their food products. Is a company called Campbell's Soup. They told me that Campbell's Soup's putting a Canadian flag on their cans. They closed their plants here. They moved everything down to the U.S. and they put recipe made in Canada. What sort of nonsense is that? Don't let them hoodwink you. I'm going to call them out again. I'm going to show you one of their cans. It's unacceptable that they do that. Don't try to pull one over people's eyes. Canadians are too smart for that.
Canada imports things, does final finishing work, but that final finishing work is very undefined. Like it can be like you take a pen built in China or whatever and you put it in a box and now it's assembled in Canada. Poof, right? And Ford loves those trade things because that's how you access the American market with your cheap goods. So like they've created this offshore things. He's talking about this like it's terrible, and it's underpinning a whole bunch of people's jobs, especially through the USMCA and the rest. So sure, I guess buy Canadian, but really, Doug?
So please, when you go shopping, I know it's not always possible, buy Canadian as you...
It's a narrative. It's a lie. It's fake. Okay, we've got some free speech stuff to get through, and I'm hoping to get through that before the end of the stream, but we've only got a minute, so we've got a little. Well, we'll do this one. We've got a couple minutes. Hustle Bitch is talking about how Kamala Harris uses wired headphones because the Bluetooth ones, they'll spy on you through those. So here we go. Here's Kamala Harris.
I rolled calls, and that's me on a call. So you'll see my phone is actually on my lap, and I know I've been teased about this, but I like these kinds of ear pods that have the thing.
Yeah.
Because
the wire.
I've served on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I have been in classified briefings, and I'm telling you, don't be on the train using your ear pods and thinking somebody can't listen to your conversation. I'm just telling you, that's a little bit more secure.
So they can definitely listen to your conversation. So there's a reason that all of the phones got rid of their jack, because people wouldn't have switched from the jack if they had a choice. That's why. That's why. And now everybody wears Bluetooth, which is easily hackable, and they can listen into all your phone calls just through that Bluetooth jack in. Right? Wild. Bernie is talking about the WEF and the Online Safety Act. And Bernie says, the Online Safety Act didn't happen in the United Kingdom in isolation. Remember, it's not a coincidence. The head of Ofcom, Melanie Dawes, is a key member of WEF's Global Coalition for Digital Safety, also pushing governments to censor anything labeled misinformation or harm. The UK, Australia, Ireland, Singapore, Belgium, Ukraine, and Brazil are already adopting or aligning with this WEF framework, all part of the UN club. We are too. We are aligning with this as well. So that's pretty worrisome. Dallas Brody says Dave Duert, director of Samadan, a listed terrorist organization in Canada, gathers in Vancouver Park on Tuesday to glorify martyrdom. But Sean can't have a permit to sing Jesus Loves Me. Sign our petition to end the double standard in BC. And she's the head of 1BC, so we'll see how that works out. Sean is responding to CBC. Now, this headline just stuck out to me. These things stick out like a sore thumb because 33 is certainly not the number of churches burned. But, you know, it's at least 33. But that's definitely not the number. But at least 33 have burned. Weird, right? That's a weird headline because this is definitely not the number, but we're using this one anyway. At least 33 Canadian churches have burned to the ground since May 2021. So far, 24 are confirmed arsons. So 33, eh? Weird. Sean says, imagine being so brainwashed and hard-hearted to the cries of the church that you would publicly question if Christian persecution is a Canadian reality. Or in Canada is a reality. These people are demented and sick. Even the God media had to admit the truth. So, yeah, 33 Canadian churches burned down, and it's very, very, it's interesting to me that the safety concern here is the Christian guy and not the terrorist organization guy. Sean says Saskatoon mayor is deeply concerned about the church worshiping outside. City solicitor, there are no public safety concerns that would require the event to be canceled. Police at this time were not aware of any immediate safety concerns. One of these is not like the other. And so Saskatoon approved the permit for Sean. Upcoming concert, city solicitor confirms that was as of July 30th, but we'll see if they can manufacture some kind of safety thing before then. X22 is reporting that Operation Mockingbird never ended. Another win or conspiracy theorist. Operation Mockingbird is just morphing into people who do a podcast like mine, and they're pretty and they have very, very polished names and they have big guests and they have massive viewership because they're not censored. And so it's very interesting that people don't see it. I saw it right away. If they couldn't buy the current crop of influencers who are, you know, just a bunch of plucky people who are interested in this kind of stuff too, they had to move the mainstream media, e-talk hosts, former hosts who used to be in newsrooms, but, you know, I just couldn't do it anymore because they're lying to you. Yeah, sure they are. Sure they're lying to you. And maybe you're a CIA asset. Maybe you're a CSIS asset. Maybe you're a Project Mockingbird. And I wouldn't be surprised, man. I wouldn't be surprised. Color me skeptical. Man, this one's a bit of a long one. The short story on this one is Facebook bought a VPN network, like a VPN thing, and they used the VPN to spy on all of the traffic around whoever was using the VPN. And they used that to identify competitors like WhatsApp, and then they bought WhatsApp and Snapchat, and they stole a whole bunch of Snapchat's best features and things like that because the users were going to Snapchat because Instagram or whoever didn't have those features. So these companies, man, unbelievable strategy, wild strategy. And speech and data is something you don't even know. Like once you connect to the internet, oftentimes you think that it's between you and the website, but it's not, man. It's between you and the VPN you use and the network that you're on. And like, there's so many people who get to see what you're doing online, and people think it's encrypted and stuff. It's public. It's public. Be aware that it's public. And there are companies who are targeting you to use that data against you. And so this is an interesting thread. You should read it. It's got a lot more details than I've just given. So anyway, with that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on and talk about our grab bag of governance, because that's next. Senator Housakis is responding to Blacklock's reporter talking about the recognition of Palestine.